There's no evidence that Biden ordered anyone to utilize the auto pen on his behalf. No staffer, no emails, nothing has been given to James Comer, the Republicans in Congress. Nobody is under oath stating that they were told to pardon anyone via auto pen. Almost all the pardons were signed via auto pen. Biden only signed one or a small number of pardons. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. The President of the United States must pardon an individual, not anyone around him. This testimony, Biden's doctor is not linked to any criminal activity. I am not accusing Biden's doctor of any crimes. The other staffers, potentially, like the Honorable James Comey says. This man, not accused of any crimes. I'm not accusing him of any crimes. However, his answers here are very bizarre. Hit subscribe to my super chat. Thank you so much. You help fuel these live streams. Let's go.
Witnesses or entities must clearly state the specific privilege being asserted and the reason for the assertion on or before the scheduled date of testimony or appearance. I will enter as Exhibit 5 a letter dated July 8th, 2025 to your counsel from Gary Lakowski, Deputy Counsel to the President, informing you that President Trump has determined not to assert executive privilege over issues regarding your assessment of President Biden's fitness for office and your financial relationship with the Biden family. For the purposes of the deposition, objections must be stated concisely in a non-argumentative and non-suggestive manner. If the witness refuses to answer a question to preserve a privilege, the committee may seek a ruling from the chair. If the chair overrules any such objection, the witness shall be ordered to answer. Do you understand?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer, and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
So everyone from the ladies at The View to the Democratic Party pundits, mouthpieces, echo chamber channels with millions of subs, to journalists at the Washington Post and New York Times. Although this man is not linked to any criminal behavior, I'm not accusing him of any crimes. This is exactly, the next couple of minutes is exactly why the Supreme Court will rule, when it gets to the Supreme Court, that Biden's pardons are null and void. This is exactly why, in addition to some other testimony you're going to hear.
If the witness continues to refuse to answer a question despite being ordered to do so, the witness may be subject to sanction. Do you understand?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I'm not a lawyer, and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Finally, I will note for everyone here today that the contents of what we discuss in the deposition are confidential under the House deposition regulations. Under the rules, the chairman and ranking minority members shall consult before any release of testimony or transcripts, including portions thereof. This means it is a violation of House and committee rules to disclose contents of this deposition prior to its official release. Can the reporter please swear in the witness?
Will you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly declare and affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go off the record. Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer. I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Let the record reflect that.
That's a simple yes or no. There's no perjury trap there. Were you ever told to lie? Were you ever told to lie about Biden's health or cognitive abilities And so he almost certainly was directed not to express the viewpoint that Biden had cognitive issues, the same cognitive issues that forced George Clooney, or that compelled George Clooney to write an op-ed kicking Biden out after he won his primary, helping Harris usurp him. But this is interesting. This is not a perjury trap. This is not a perjury trap. Why would he not simply say, I was not told to lie? Why would he not simply say that?
Thank you. We'll go off the record. Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer. I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Let the record reflect that Dr. O'Connor has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Dr. O'Connor, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer, and I must rely on my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Dr. O'Connor, did you ever believe the president was unfit to execute his duties as president?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based on the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I'm not a lawyer, and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Let the record reflect that Dr. O'Connor has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Dr. O'Connor, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer. I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Again, I'm not accusing the doctor, this man, of any criminal behavior, but can you imagine if the roles were reversed? What Democrats, media, the average pundit on the left, a wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrat who despises Trump, could you imagine what they would say if Trump was slurring his speech and meandering off into Never Never Land when he was walking? Could you imagine if President Trump's doctor pleaded the Fifth when asked if he was ever told to lie about President Trump's health or cognitive abilities? Obviously, they wouldn't believe any of the testimony. Headlines would be written in the New York Times and Washington Post. That's why people don't trust media. There's an Atlantic, what is it, Harper's or Atlantic? No, it's Harper's or an article in one of the wonderful, morally superior, highly educated publications. Why don't they trust media? Why don't we trust media? Because media are composed of journalists that are lifelong liberal Democrats who will only vote Democrat, who despise the Republican Party or will never vote for President Trump. By and large, the average journalist has become an activist or a public relations executive for the Democratic Party. Everything is seen through the lenses of liberal ideology or left-leaning ideology.
Dr. O'Connor, is it your intention to decline to answer all questions put to you today by the committee on the basis of the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer, and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
And we can tell you that he will have the same answer with respect to any questions that are asked.
Thank you, sir. Does the minority wish to ask any questions?
We wish to give Mr. Strickler an opportunity to make his statement, and we'd like to enter a few exhibits into the record.
Okay, go on. We'll go off the record.
Dr. O'Connor, good morning. Just wanted to note for the record that prior to your appearance for today's deposition, your attorneys raised with the majority your position that the questions posed to you today by my majority colleagues may require you to infringe on doctor-patient confidentiality, a fundamental principle of medicine.
Yeah, that's nonsense when we can go on. This is the Democratic Party trying to justify the doctor pleading the fifth. The president of the United States, when his doctor says he's of sound mind, the country needs to know that. And I'm not accusing this man of any criminal behavior. I'm just saying the cover-up was, his staffers, the entire political party, the media who lied by omission, who ignored Biden's obvious and overt mental decline, even in 2019, simply for political power to defeat Trump. But he was slurring speech in 2020. He was saying bizarre things in 2020, yet he won the most votes ever. But the president of the United States has the power to decide whether or not we enter a nuclear war. His fitness, his health, his mental acuity is not only important for national security, it's important for the lives of every single American. So I'm not exactly sure if everything on the planet was leaked about Trump, taxes, everything. Okay, so it's like nothing's leaked with Democrats. There's another reason why nobody trusts media. Not that anyone has to leak anything, but they lie by omission. Hunter's laptop, 50 intel officials lied. We can go on forever, and then media took it seriously. The Steele dossier, media took it seriously. So it's like the media is like an extension of the Democratic Party. They either overtly lie or lie by omission, and see only bad with Trump and only good with Democrats, by and large. But anyway, we need to know the fitness, the mental fitness of the President of the United States. This is not simply a normal citizen. But let's continue here. Hit subscribe if you're new to my super chat. Thank you. Can't do this without you. Angie, thank you so much for the kind words.
Dr. O'Connor pleaded the Fifth Amendment, and I'm gonna read the first two questions that were asked. Were you ever told to lie about the president's health? He pleaded the Fifth Amendment. He would not answer that question. The second question, did you ever believe President Biden was unfit to execute his duties? Again, President Biden's White House position pleaded the Fifth Amendment. This is unprecedented, and I think that this adds.
He referred all of this to the Department of Justice. It is now a criminal investigation. It is now a criminal investigation. Okay? Let's continue.
It's more fuel to the fire, that there was a cover-up. I believe that this adds legitimacy to the Tapper book and the other books that are in the works that are about to come out that shows there was a lot of suspicious activity taking place in the White House with respect to the president's health. This is something I think every American is concerned about. I think every American wants to know the truth. We're going to continue. This investigation will move forward. We have several other witnesses that are going to come in for depositions and transcribed interviews. We will do everything in our ability to be transparent with the media, be transparent with the American people. This is very serious. And this was an opportunity for Dr. O'Connor to defend his reputation, to defend his work, and he chose to take the Fifth. And I think that
pleading the Fifth was the best thing that could have happened to start a criminal probe. Okay? Nobody answered whether they were told. Nobody knows who ran the auto pen. None of the staffers. Okay? Nobody, as far from what I've read and from the testimony that I've seen to prepare for these live streams, not one person testifying has named an individual or knows who was running the auto pen. They literally don't know who was running the auto pen, and the auto pen pardoned Cheney, Schiff, the Unselect, the Select Committee, a whole bunch of people. Fauci. They don't know who ran the auto pen. This is not about whether a president can run this is why you get this is why media is an extension of the Democratic Party. They lie by omission, and they frame questions as if the questions were being read by an imbecile. Well, the auto pen. Other presidents have used the auto pen. It's not about the auto pen, disingenuous, wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrat in media. It is about whether he knew what he was doing, whether other people usurped the president and just started pardoning anyone they wanted with an auto pen. George Clooney and Hollywood and media literally kicked Biden out because of mental issues, potential mental and cognitive issues. How sure is anyone that Biden deliberately, specifically ordered the pardon of Cheney or Schiff or the Select Committee or Fauci with the auto pen? Nobody has even testified on that. They already had about 10 people, over 10 people testifying. Not one of them said, this person's name started working on the auto pen to pardon. Nobody knows. Okay? They can say, oh, it was delegated, but who was working the auto pen? That's a big deal, because that person can then verify all the potential lies of the staffers saying, oh, it was delegated.
That's something that every American is going to be concerned about.
Is some of that because of the doctor-patient confidentiality? I mean, there are questions about, HIPAA and Hippocratic Oath. And
the first two questions pertained, again, were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
Were you ever told to lie about exactly? It's so disingenuous. Oh, you had a stutter. Were you ever told to lie about the president's health? Is nothing to do with his cholesterol level or anything to do with his health. The question is political in nature. Were you ever told to lie by politicians, by staffers, by anyone? That has nothing to do with his health. So that's not protected by any privilege.
And he pled the fifth.
But when
had nothing to do with.
But that when you have these depositions, people don't toggle back and forth. Either they invoke the fifth or they don't. Mm-hmm. So I mean, could that have been just giving himself a shield overall because they don't go back and forth?
Most people invoke the fifth when they have criminal liability, and that's what it would appear on the surface here. So we're not going to. We're going to continue to move forward. Obviously, I think.
I wouldn't want to plead the fifth if I was in a deposition. I'd be like, okay, this is what happened. Let's go. I'm gonna exonerate myself. Okay, that's what he's saying. You plead the fifth, you're allowed to do so in the Constitution. But why would you want to plead the fifth if you're innocent and you want to say, hey, you know what? I'm not a part of this crew. I'm not a part of these people that are committing deceitful acts or criminal behavior, whatever. Here's my viewpoint. I want you to know my story. Why would I plead the fifth? You don't plead the fifth. Again, I'm not accusing the doctor. The doctor's in a precarious situation, but he could have answered that question. Let's continue.
His actions today speak loud and clear. Again, this was an opportunity to come clean. And, he can say, oh, the president was in great health. This is just a conspiracy theory. He was fine. I don't know why they used the auto pen 75% of the time when he was in the White House. I mean, this is what it's all about. It's about the auto pen. There is serious concern, and the evidence mounts by the minute that Joe Biden had no idea what his name was being signed to. And we're talking about executive orders, and we are talking about pardons. So, what Dr. O'Connor did today only added fuel to the fire, that there was a cover-up and that, Joe Biden wasn't mentally fit to serve as president of the United States.
The House Oversight Committee releasing its report on the investigation into former President Biden's use of the auto pen and the alleged cover-up.
This man also pardoned murderers, people on death row, committing the most heinous crimes, taking the lives of innocent Americans. Okay? Why would you commute the sentences of people on death row when they've already been convicted? And there's no DNA, there's no there's no question of their guilt. And then cheer for the murder of, because like a lot of liberals and wonderful morally superior liberals throughout the country lost their jobs or were on video cheering after Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Those same liberals would be okay with Biden pardoning a vicious, cold, evil, diabolical murderer who took the lives of innocent or numerous innocent people, human beings, and they would say, oh, that person should be provided clemency or a commutation of a death sentence. Well, so capital punishment is not, apparently to wonderful morally superior liberals, capital punishment is not worthy, or a person who murders somebody is not worthy of capital punishment, but Charlie Kirk literally sitting on a chair he deserved capital punishment because of his words, because they made wonderful morally superior liberals who are against the death penalty uncomfortable. Does that make any sense at all? And that's another reason why the Democratic Party is imploding upon the weight of its own ideology.
Of his mental decline. The committee says executive action signed via auto pen should now be null and void, recommending the Justice Department look into whether Joe Biden himself even authorized them or knew about them. Biden's aides, Annie Tomasini, Anthony Bernal, and Karine Jean-Pierre, all facing scrutiny this morning for their part in the cover-up. The 91-page report includes more than a dozen transcribed interviews and numerous document requests. House Speaker Mike Johnson says the Biden White House's inner circle hid the signs of the former president's mental decline while he was in the Oval Office. Watch.
Every executive action signed by the auto pen without written authorization from President Biden should be voided. This is an unprecedented situation in American politics and government. The actions of President Biden simply were not all his own actions, and there are major implications to that.
So what's the rebuttal to Mike Johnson? Oh, that's not true. He delegated authority. You can't delegate authority for the president. The ex parte Garland and all these Supreme Court rulings state specifically the president himself has to either sign or order the pardon. Nobody is on record stating that they heard Biden or specifically order a pardon. Nobody is on record as stating that, and nobody's on record as stating that they knew who was operating the auto pen. That's bizarre. That is, could it be a spy of another country? Who knows? Well, that's bizarre. I mean, I'm obviously being facetious, but who was running? What are the names of the people? None of the staffers, none of the chief of staff, the top aides, the top staffers would even. They haven't testified. They haven't told anyone the individuals who ran the auto pen. That is a big problem because those individuals have to back up the entire story of every single staffer for people to circumvent criminal liability.
Georgia has been rated.
Attorney General Pam Bondi says her office is now reviewing all Biden pardons signed by the auto pen. A Biden spokesperson is pushing back on all of it, telling Fox, quote, there was no conspiracy, there was no cover-up, and there was no wrongdoing. Joining me now is House Oversight Committee Chairman Miss.
There was no conspiracy, no wrongdoing, but he won his primary and then was kicked out because of George Clooney's op-ed and Democrats kicking him out. The way the Democratic Party works is they expect their voters to just vote Democrat no matter what. It could be literally an empty chair. And the Democrats, the voters, will do so. That's the way they operate. The American public does not operate that way. Okay, if God forbid there's a land war in Venezuela, and there won't be, I will not vote for J.D. Vance. And I love Trump. I am not a brainwashed, indoctrinated, artificial intelligence, morally superior liberal Democrat or a far left socialist or communist who only votes Democrat. I love Trump. I love J.D. Vance. But I'm not going to, if there's a land war and he sends American soldiers into Venezuela, I will not vote Democrat for sure, because they would have done infinitely worse. But I will not vote, and you saw that with Iraq and Afghanistan, but I will not vote Republican, even though Like I said, I love Trump because the number one reason is that I don't want never-ending wars. That's why I voted for Trump. Okay? And there won't be a counterinsurgency conflict in any country under Trump. There won't be an endless land war. Okay. So, but that is my mentality. That's the mentality of most Americans. I'm not going to vote for somebody that I don't that did something I feel is terrible. The way Democrats work is that Biden can win the primary. They don't care about the primary. It's completely a facade. Bernie Sanders has cheated. Everyone finds out about that. Clinton can have private servers. If Trump had private servers, I'd have a big problem. Huge problem. Okay? If he had private servers with top secret intel and said it was about yoga, I'd be like, yeah, he's lying. This is bizarre. I might not vote for this man. But that doesn't work with Democrats. If Trump cheated Rubio, I'd want Rubio. Because I would say that's bizarre. Why is he cheating? No, I would not vote for President Trump if he cheated an opposing candidate the way Clinton cheated Bernie Sanders. But they all fall in line. That's the thing. So, of course, the Biden White House is expecting the entire American public, like they did from the very beginning when Biden was like walking and seeing ghosts and slurring speech and saying that he defeated cornflakes, to just believe anything and walk in line. But see, that's why the Democrats are completely imploding. They don't have functioning primaries. They had a president with serious mental decline that they lied about. They had laptop with bribery. They had a Hunter's laptop with bribery and graft, private servers with top secret intelligence on it. They have cover-up after cover-up after cover-up after scandal after scandal. The media is silent. The entire world knows. And the entire world says, nah, we're not going to do this. And that's why criminal charges, and that's why the Supreme Court is not going to uphold these pardons. Because the pardons are not constitutional. Biden almost certainly did not delegate responsibility. He had no clue what was going on, almost certainly.
Mr. James Comer. And Mr. Chairman, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria.
You've called this one of the biggest political scandals in U.S. history. Tell us why.
Well, we found two things. First of all, there was a cover-up of Joe Biden's mental and cognitive decline. That in itself is a huge scandal. But secondly, we found that there was many instances of unauthorized use of the auto pen. These were unnamed staffers that were acting as de facto president of the United States. We went through all the emails. We went through National Archives, any notes, anything. We could never find any instances where Joe Biden was actually in the room with the people who were making the decisions on use of the auto pen to sign Joe Biden's signature on legal documents. We have emails from the Merrick Garland Department of Justice warning these Biden staffers of excessive use of the auto pen for legal documents. We also have emails from Merrick Garland's Department of Justice questioning whether the president even knew that these pardons were being granted. And in review, in all the hours of depositions, in all of the emails and all of the documents that we reviewed, never was there evidence that Joe Biden was involved in the decision making. And even more, we had evidence, Maria, that there was an obvious cover-up of his mental decline. Staffers admitted that they talked about giving Joe Biden a cognitive test, but ultimately declined to do that for whatever reason. So I think that now, with what we've gathered, this is the heavy lifting. We've now passed this along to Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice, and we fully expect those pardons to be declared null and void.
That is just unbelievable. I want to talk specifically about what's most.
So for the 1,000 viewers here, thank you. Hit subscribe if you're new. If there's a morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrat that watches The View and wakes up in the morning, watches CNN, MSNBC, The View, reads the Washington Post, the New York Times, goes to bed at night, and tucks themselves into bed watching Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert and John Oliver and Seth Meyers, and so they're indoctrinated beyond belief. This has nothing to do with the auto pen. I'm going to speak very clearly and slowly. This is not about the auto pen. Biden had every right to use an auto pen. This is about whether Biden knew he was delegating authority to use the auto pen, whether Biden ordered anyone to use the auto pen. We don't know. None of the staffers, none of the chief of staff, top aides, never stated that Biden ordered this individual to use the auto pen. They don't know who was running the auto pen. They literally don't know. And there are emails saying, yes, Biden has delegated authority, signed chief of staff. That's not constitutional. That's not constitutional. Biden had to write the email, but God bless him, we know he can't. And so that's the issue. The issue is not about whether he had the authority to use the auto pen. He had the authority to use the auto pen. Trump can use the auto pen. The issue is, did he, into the comments, did he order anyone to pardon Schiff, Cheney, the Select Committee? Who ordered the pardon of the Select Committee or Fauci or others? Who ordered this pardon? And how do we know Biden ordered the pardon? Because he was forced out. The question now is, the rebuttal is, well, he verbally told people. Okay, then who did he tell? Because he was forced out. The same pundits who said he's going to win it, he won in a landslide, you're a denier. He was forced out before November of 24. Why was he forced out? He was forced out because of cognitive issues. So if he's forced out because of cognitive issues, it is only rational and logical and reasonable and right and just to question whether those cognitive issues were involved in any decision making or impeded any decision making. If he was forced out because of mental decline, how on earth are the pardons valid? That makes the pardons invalid, null and void. But let's continue.
Important in terms of null and void, but on the cover-up, this is really extraordinary because it was all in plain sight for everyone to see. But God forbid you raised your hand and said, hey, I think our commander-in-chief is having a problem. You were slammed and attacked in social media. Of course, we called it out on this program many times back to 2018 and 2019. Watch this.
Attention, senior.
We know that Biden is weak. We're not sure about his mental capacity. We know somebody else is running things, but the alternative is even worse. Kamala Harris. How is that presidential story going to look? One concern the Democrats have for Biden 2024 is his age and health. I mean, look, we all watch him. It doesn't bring anybody any joy to point out cognitive issues. No, it didn't bring us joy, but we pointed it out anyway. Congressman, I want to get your take on what was most important. He signed a lot of documents. He signed a lot of the auto pen signed documents. The auto pen signed pardons. And what do you believe is most important in terms of policy that Joe Biden's auto pen signed off on?
Well, they signed all of the executive orders during the lame duck session. When the 3 months between November, when Donald Trump won the election, and January, when he actually took office, there was a lot of activity with that auto pen. Ironically, 75% of the time, Maria, the auto pen was used. Joe Biden was in the White House. I mean, they weren't even communicating with him. He was either unable to sign a document on his desk.
It also links to criminal behavior. 75% of the time, Biden was in the White House when they used the auto pen. Well, then why is it so difficult for anyone to say, okay, these are the people who use the auto pen. They were told by the president to use the auto pen. So the way it works is he was in the White House. They were using the auto pen to pardon the entire planet because they're all, criminals and they want to pardon everybody. Okay, if Trump did this, if Trump had private service, if Trump had a laptop full of graft, if Trump pardoned everyone and he had cognitive abilities, he was forced out. If Trump was forced out for Rubio, if Trump was forced out for Pence, the entire planet would be like, oh my God, but this is completely normal for the media and Democrats. Okay, they accused Trump of the most absurd things, of working with Russia. He didn't have to work with Russia, and number one, he didn't. Number two, he wouldn't have had to because Clinton had servers with top secret intelligence. They cheated Bernie Sanders. I was telling the world that Clinton was going to lose. Anyway, Clinton wanted Trump. Her campaign wanted Trump. That was in the campaign emails. And Politico wrote an article. They got the man they always wanted. But then they lied and said, oh my God. So they created a fabricated, and then people will be indicted there. These are crimes that they committed. With the absurd allegations against Trump, oh, he spoke to Republicans. Yeah, because less than 4 years later, Biden was kicked out of office. Why would you? The election deniers are Democrats who kicked Biden out of office. How do you lose all of that support in less than 4 years? But again, if Biden is in the White House, if he's in the White House and the auto pen's being signed, doesn't take a rocket scientist. You don't need Sherlock Holmes to realize, okay, he's in the White House for 75% of the pardons. How did he delegate authority? Who did he delegate the authority to? And how did that take place? And then who told the people who ran the auto pen? That's the issue. Nobody can answer those questions. And they've been under oath. Nobody answered the questions
in the Oval Office, or they just weren't even paying attention. They had just brushed him aside and were acting as President of the United States. But you had many executive orders that were signed to Trump-proof this administration, to make it harder to eliminate the Department of Education, to make it harder to bring the federal employees who have been at home since COVID back to work. These were intentionally done by the unnamed bureaucrats that were authorizing the use of the auto pen. Now, we also see the pardons that were signed. And look, right now, what Donald Trump's trying to do, what Pam Bondi and John Radcliffe and Kash Patel and all those guys have done, they've shined a light on the deep state abuses in the Department of Justice, in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the list goes on and on. A weaponized Department of Justice under Joe Biden and Merrick Garland. To hold these people accountable, it's been very difficult because many were granted pardons by the auto pen on the last day of the Biden presidency, with no record that Joe Biden played any role whatsoever in the authorization of those pardons. So I think
that's another issue. If the majority of the pardons or of the controversial pardons are on the last day, okay, then how were those decisions made? You're talking about a man who was forced out of the presidential race because of cognitive decline. So did that cognitive decline have anything to do with the fact that these pardons were signed by the auto pen the last day in office? So those decisions had to be made within the week, 2 weeks prior. Or at least discussion within a week, 2 weeks, a couple days prior. So, but nobody has ever testified that he's had over 10 people, top staffers, none of them, even of course the doctor you heard, they're either pleading the fifth or they're saying, I can't recall. Well, if it's a criminal investigation, people will recall. And then they'll be like, oh, well, and then there's perjury and all that.
All those pardons from Dr. Fauci to the Biden family to Adam Schiff, the January 6th committee, the list goes on and on and on. I think every one of those pardons signed with the auto pen with no evidence that Joe Biden was involved in the decision making, I think every one of those can be declared null and void by the Department of Justice. And I think our evidence in the investigation will make that decision hold up in court.
It goes to the Supreme Court. And when it goes to the Supreme Court, the Democrats will have to either accept, they can't defend it without lying, because almost certainly crimes were committed. So then what are they going to do? They're going to tell the Supreme Court, yeah, well, we had the email that said he wanted it. No one is going to say, Biden told me to use the auto pen. I was using the auto pen. Nobody's saying that ever, ever, ever. None of the people who use the auto pen are saying, yeah, the president told me to use the auto pen. That will never happen. So how are they going to defend this to the Supreme Court? Because the oral arguments, the Supreme Court is going to ask Clarence Thomas, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, all of them will ask Alito, who used the auto pen? What was the name of the person who used the auto pen? Did that person speak to Biden? Oh, well, Your Honor, it doesn't usually happen. Did that person speak to Biden? Yes or no? Did that person speak to anyone associated with Biden? Well, he spoke to the chief of staff. Okay. Then chief of staff has an email. Well, when did Biden tell you? Oh, I can't recall. Are you sure that he told you? Yes. Well, where did he tell you? Oh, I can't recall. Well, that's part of the cover up right there.
That is unbelievable. I mean, you're right. You had people like Liz Cheney and others in that January 6th committee reportedly destroying documents. We don't know what went on with the January 6th investigation. You're saying now that pardon is null and void, or should be null and void. You also had massive policies.
Hold on before you pay for yet another app to manage
people. All that spending, $7 trillion in spending, leading to 40-year high inflation, boys in girls sports, a wide open border. Some of these things will be hard to undo because it's already documented that we've had 10 to 20 million people come in unvetted in this country, and they've committed serious crimes. But you're saying going forward, you will push for those documents and pardons to be null and void.
Absolutely. And the evidence that we've accumulated, and this is hours and hours and hours of deposition, hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents pertaining to emails and notes and things like that, I believe that's enough evidence to hold up in court. Whether it be the Supreme Court or any court in the land, the evidence is there that there was a cover-up and that there was unauthorized use of the auto pen. That is a huge scandal. I would argue the biggest scandal in American history. And now the damage, some of the damage with respect to holding some of these people accountable. I mean, the president never even gave a statement or an interview as to why he pardoned the entire January 6th committee, or why he pardoned Dr. Fauci, or why he pardoned all of his siblings and their spouses. Of course, you and I know why he pardoned all those people. But if you're giving a pardon, two things you should be able to should be required to do, Maria. You should be required to sign it yourself, and secondly, stand in front of a TV camera and answer questions as to why you made that decision.
Yeah.
He has never made a public statement.
That's unbelievable.
About why he pardoned the overwhelming majority of those people.
And nobody is stating, none of his staffers under oath gave the names of anyone who operated the auto pen. Why? Because those people would have had to have some kind of communication with the president. You simply can't have a chief of staff or a staffer tell another individual, you have to pardon this person. Well, how do I know I'm using this auto pen? Oh, because I have this email from the president. Go ahead, pardon the person. It don't work that way. And that's unconstitutional.
And he's never had to answer to a lot of those executive orders that were signed. Usually when a president signs an executive order, he does it in front of a TV camera. He answers questions just like we saw President Trump do. We've seen President Obama do it. The list goes on and on. At the very end of the administration, when that auto pen was pretty much the President of the United States, there were no public statements from the President of the United States.
So obviously someone else was making these decisions and deciding who they wanted to pardon and who they wanted and what regulations they wanted to push forward. And in the middle of all of this, they were actually spying on Republicans. New documents revealed that more than 160 Republicans, including current Trump administration officials, may have been investigated by the FBI under Joe Biden's Operation Arctic Frost. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Dan Scavino, U.S. Pardon Attorney Ed Martin, and White House Trade Advisor Peter Navarro, all among the prominent GOP figures named in FBI files released by the House Judiciary Committee yesterday, Mr. Chairman. You had Chairman Jim Jordan saying he wants Special Counsel Jack Smith to sit for a formal deposition over this, Mr. Chairman. So what do you want to say about that? While somebody else was running things in the White House, pushing whatever policies they wanted, who knows if Joe Biden knew or not, using the auto pen, another part of government was actually investigating their political opponents, the Republicans.
This is what happens when you have a weak president. You have the deep state that takes control. The deep state are unnamed bureaucrats that are in positions of great power within various government agencies, and they have abused that power. They've weaponized their agencies against conservatives and certainly against Donald Trump.
And so you're going to hear some of the testimony right now.
Michelle, report on President Biden's use of the auto pen, finding his actions in office were not all his own and claiming his inner circle went to great lengths to hide the truth about his condition and fitness for office. That story doesn't go away. Welcome to a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. I'm Dana Perino.
Morning to you, partner. Good first hour.
That was spectacular.
Flying by.
Never seen anything better.
Right on. In the words of Frank Sinatra.
Some of your best work.
By. Thank you. I appreciate you too as well.
Oh, thanks.
I'm Bill Hemmer. Here we go now. House Republicans on the Oversight Committee set to release a report after a series of interviews with more than a dozen.
So over 12 people, not one could tell you that they knew the individual who ran the auto pen. Okay, this is a problem. That's unconstitutional. You can deceive. Okay, this isn't rocket science. A staffer could forge an email, give it to the individual that runs the auto pen and say, oh, the president wants you to pardon my uncle or this convicted Wall Street scammer or this crypto or this, whatever. This, you could deceive the person running the auto pen. Nobody has ever stated under oath that they knew the individual running the auto pens. So that's one issue in an upcoming criminal investigation or the current criminal investigation.
Key Biden aides. That committee calling on the DOJ to review all of Biden's executive actions signed by AutoPen and avoid any orders signed without his full knowledge and consent.
And we have brand new video just released as those aides appeared before the committee.
He hand-signed many executive orders, but he did not hand-sign all executive orders.
Do you know any of the actual staff who were using the AutoPen?
No.
You don't know their names?
No.
And that's why the Supreme Court has essentially already made these pardons null and void. Nobody knows who ran the auto pens. Okay, nobody knows the individuals who were told to pardon people through AutoPen. That's the issue. That's what makes this almost certainly a criminal conspiracy.
His rhetorical skills were not as strong as they had been, and his speeches were less effective, I thought.
I think it's fair to say within a few days after the debate, he was aware of my view that I thought it was prudent to consider getting out of the race.
That could be viewed as a viewpoint linked to an election denier. How could you deny the sanctity of Biden winning more votes than anyone ever, than even President Obama, being more inspiring, being more having more political capital than anyone in 2020, and less than 4 years later, because of one debate, suddenly his own staff even says he should drop out. That makes no sense. You don't lose political capital that quickly. Okay? You don't lose, maybe you never had that political capital. Maybe that the trust and safety team at Twitter protecting Hunter's laptop and all of these, maybe the entire American media government, maybe that monstrosity that helped buoy the Democratic Party, maybe that was what catapulted Biden, along with potential issues that President Trump was talking about. Anyway, let's continue.
He said himself he wasn't as good debater as he used to be, or he wasn't speaking as well as he used to. That's something that he said. He actually spoke to.
So for a lot of us, that's the first time we've seen that video. Aisha Hosny has the follow-up on Capitol Hill with the key takeaways. And Aisha, good morning there.
Good morning to you, Bill and Dana. So the committee is just really dumping all of the information for you at home to watch and see and decide for yourself. But they are saying that the former president was not running the show. And so therefore, his pardons and executive actions made by the AutoPen, they are null and void. So take a a look at this. This is really the process that the pardons went through when it went through the auto pen. You can see this is like a game of telephone here. It starts off with a staffer who tells former Chief of Staff Jeffrey Zients's aide, Rosa Poe, so not even Jeffrey Zients, but his aide, about the decision from the president. Then Poe calls Zients to inform him of the pardon decision, and then Zients tells Poe to send an email from his personal account to authorizing the auto pen. Then she sends an email approving the auto pen use from Zients' account, signed JZ. Someone in the staff secretary's office would then convey that to someone who would then use the auto pen.
This is unconstitutional. None of the Supreme Court precedent allows any of this nonsense to take place. You have a game of telephone because Biden had serious, God bless him, cognitive abilities. Okay, wish him only the best, even though he was a terrible president, likely committed lots of crimes with bribery and graft and classified data before he was president. Trump was president with the power to declassify anyway. The point is, this is unconstitutional. You cannot have 10, 20 degrees of separation between the president and the pardon. It doesn't work that way. And nobody knows who ran the auto pens. But anyway, hit subscribe to this channel if you're new. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right after this and subscribe there. That's below in the description as well. Subscribe to, and to read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Federalist, other publications, go to hagoodman.com. Let's continue. Hit subscribe. Let's go.
For pardons. So you see here why there are so many questions. Now, it all comes after the panel dragged in more than a dozen Biden-era officials to Capitol Hill. We saw everyone from Karine Jean-Pierre, Zients, also Jill Biden's alleged work husband. The report alleges that these aides, they all coordinated a cover-up of the president's diminishing faculties. So the president, who just wrapped up chemo for prostate cancer, is responding today through a spokesperson, writing this investigation into baseless claims.
And God bless him. I wish him only the best. I'm not like this rabid, frothing at the mouth, morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrat who wants anyone they disagree with or any politician they don't like to cease to exist. I want Biden to live a long, much longer, happier life. God bless him. Okay? That's with the full knowledge that there was so much corruption, it's unbelievable. See, they had to make things up about Trump. Oh, he worked with the Russians. Oh, what about this? What about that? It's like, well, he didn't have servers. He didn't have laptops. He didn't have graft or bribery. And he wasn't forced out by his own political party. And he didn't pardon the entire planet. Okay. And the EP files, that was a Democratic donor who gave 20 grand to Hillary Clinton, over 20 grand to Chuck Schumer and a whole bunch of other Democrats. And Trump had a plane. The other Democrats didn't have their own planes. Let's continue.
Has confirmed what has been clear from the start. President Biden made the decisions of his presidency. There was no conspiracy, no cover-up, no wrongdoing. Congressional Republicans should stop focusing on.
So literally everything they say is the opposite. The opposite of what they say is true. There was a cover-up. It was criminal in nature, almost certainly. And nobody can explain why they didn't just... Why didn't Biden email? Why didn't Biden himself... How could Biden not have ordered the auto pen directly with one person saying, okay, here, let's go? Or why didn't Biden tell the auto pen? Why didn't Biden know the individuals who ran the auto pen? That's not an outlandish notion. Shouldn't the president know the individuals who were signing his pardons? That makes no sense at all why he wouldn't know the individuals. You could literally pardon anyone by simply stating through 15 email chains, written by 20 people that, oh yeah, the president wants this. And then boom, pardon, Constitution, you use the powers of the United States Constitution vested within the president to pardon anyone.
On political retribution and instead work to end the government shutdown. Notably here, there were no criminal referrals from this report, but the committee is urging the DOJ bill to review all of the executive actions, all of these pardons that happened via AutoPen and void any of them that were unauthorized.
There's almost certainly a criminal investigation underway. Let's continue.
It's quite a web.
Sure enough, and more to come. Aisha, thanks leading our coverage on that story this hour.
So this is another interesting interview with a top staffer.
I asked you a couple follow-up questions. You were just asked a number of questions of whether or not you were aware that President Biden made any executive decisions without approval, or staff made any executive decisions without the president's authorization or approval.
Just like the doctor, I am not accusing this individual of any criminal activity. Okay, for the record, not accusing this individual of any criminal activity, although I might critique his answers.
You recall those questions being asked?
Yes.
And you said that you were not aware of any. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's kind of literally not aware of any, right? Because you wouldn't have been in the room.
I'm not aware of any decisions that were made in the president's name that were not made by the president.
But you wouldn't actually have direct knowledge of that.
Well, you referenced it in our questions last hour. My understanding is that there was a process by which he would make decisions through decision memos, things like that. I mentioned in one meeting that I can recall watching him go through and make decisions about, I believe they were nominees. And so my understanding was there was a process that was in place that would, allow the president to make expedient decisions about things before his desk.
So the process that was in place for the pardons, the 15 email chains with 20 different people, the 50 degrees of separation between Biden, the president of the United States, with the power to pardon, and individuals that actually use the AutoPen, that's unconstitutional. So the process there was unconstitutional. Let's continue.
And that was just my understanding of how it worked.
Did you ever receive any decision memos back with his initials or signature on them?
No.
And you never personally presented any decision memos to the president?
No.
All right. So it's actually that you were just not aware of any decisions. It's not that no unauthorized decisions took place.
I wasn't aware of any, and that was not my understanding of the process.
I want to go back. I think it was Exhibit 2. Yes. What was the process for approval for tweets that came from your official handle?
Generally speaking, I was empowered to make tweets as a spokesperson as part of my duties without having some sort of bureaucratic approval process. Depending on the topic, there may be, I may have run something by someone or had a conversation. I think I'm going to say this, but there was not a set approval process for my tweets.
The White House counsel wouldn't put eyes on your tweets?
If there was a topic that was super sensitive that needed, review, he may look at.
The New York Times is reporting that former President Biden told them that he had orally granted all the pardons and commutations issued at the end of his term.
Great. None of the people have ever stated that Biden told them anything. They were all done via emails. And nobody can say, okay, Biden told me this. They're not going to be on record as actually stating Biden told me to pardon this person because they don't want the liability.
Meaning he did not personally sign the official warrants for clemency. Biden told the Times that he did, in fact, make every single one of the clemency decisions himself, but says that the AutoPen was used to sign the warrants since there were a lot of them. Now, according to the Times, Biden called Trump and Republicans liars for saying he was incapacitated and his aides used the AutoPen without his authorization. Alicia, I see you're shaking your head. Your response to this?
Well, I have so many responses to this because we're supposed to believe this at this point. It's really hard to swallow that statement there, that he said that he made the decision on, quote, every single one, when we know from so much reporting that there was a limit to his time where people had access to him. So there were decisions that were made, quote unquote, after hours. We know that for a fact. And so to say that it was every single one, I'm going to have to see the receipts on this one because, and this is the question before Congress right now. They're trying to figure it out. That's why we have a line of aides and staffers coming up to testify. Who knows what we'll find out, but it's an interesting statement.
David can barely sit in his chair. You guys aren't seeing this at home. He's literally dying to get in here, David.
You're both onto something American people need to pay attention. Time, math. How many commutations and pardons in one day, and how many hours would it take for him to do this individually? It strains incredulity. Remember Hillary Clinton said willing suspension of disbelief? Just do the math on what it would take for him to do that individually when he couldn't cognitively get through more than a few hours a day of work.
You know, why weigh in on this now? I mean, isn't this just adding fuel to the fire?
Exactly what was going through my mind, Lisa, because these individuals, look, Ron Klain, others are expected to go up and be deposed on Capitol Hill. And, you know, he is not doing them any favors. I mean, look, we watched the former president fight with the short stairs on airplanes, stages.
If Biden said he gave verbal authority, and the response is, well, the authority was given through email, now you have a crime. Then they have to go back and say, well, Biden didn't really mean that. It's like, well, what? What are you talking about? If the authority was given verbally, then why were there so many emails? Which one is it? I mean, the Democrats can't type an email without the end of the world taking place.
At, across the country, fighting with teleprompters. It was all very evident in front of us. And now,
TBJ, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciated. To my super chat, thank you.
Now he's choosing to fight with the auto pen because he doesn't like it.
But notice something he said there.
Yeah.
His exact words matter. It's very lawyer-like and Clinton-like. I orally did this. This is why. Watch very carefully because I've seen.
Oh, I can go ahead and agree with him on that. That use of words is interesting. If he verbally gave the authority, then he just called everyone who testified a liar. Because this is 3 months ago, by the way, this segment. So the reporting that he verbally gave everybody authority is 3 months ago.
In this play from the Clintons, from others, they come out and they make a very clear lawyer but somewhat ambiguous statement that you really can't challenge and prove. Orally is a key word.
By the way, as the journalist in me, so it's worth noting that the interview, we're told, from the New York Times was only about 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. Didn't want to expose himself too long because, surely the New York Times is wanting to know too, like, okay, if we sit with him for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, will this become confusing for him? Will he exhibit some of that mental acuity decline? But apparently this interview with the New York Times is only about 10 minutes, we're told.
It's a tightly controlled dodge.
Well, also, where's this heading, Alicia?
Well, I think it's heading.
This is why people don't trust media. There are articles now written in the same publications that go to bat for the Democratic Party, asking, well, why don't we trust media? People don't trust media because media, by and large, push for one political side. They have a specific agenda, political agenda. It's not the truth. The truth was, unfortunately, the truth was that President Trump was not working with Russia. The truth was that Clinton did not use servers for yoga. The truth was that Bernie Sanders was cheated. Biden was cheated in his primary. The truth was that it was not President Trump's fault that you-know-what came to the country and to the world 5 years ago. Okay, that it was, oh, by the way, originated not, naturally, and it was President Trump was right about that. Okay, the media lies by omission, or overtly lies, then issues a retraction, always pushes one viewpoint and narrative and ideology. Trump is always bad. Democrats are always good. Any Democratic scandals never really investigated. Zero investigative journalism. That's another reason why people don't trust media. Where are the investigative journalists at the New York Times or Washington Post or the Atlantic or any talking about Biden's mental decline and whether the pardons are constitutional? Do you think if Trump was kicked out by his own political party and then pardoned his entire family, do you think that the people at the Atlantic would say, okay, that these pardons are constitutional? Or that the investigative journalists at the New York Times wouldn't investigate? Or the Washington Post investigative journalists wouldn't? Where are the investigative journalists at the Washington Post and New York Times looking at any scandal pertaining to Democrats? That's why people don't trust media. And then they say on the bio, we don't belong to a political party. You never investigate Democrats. You just say, well, there's nothing there. Okay, and then President Trump wins the popular vote, every battleground state, the presidency. And then they say, well, why don't we trust media? It's like, well, because you're obviously pushing for one political side.
Heading to I don't recall. This is a setup for his aides once they get in there before the committees and they start answering questions when they say, oh, so what about this act of clemency here? Do you recall him orally telling you? It's very easy for them to say, to be able to, relieve themselves of any sort of commitment to the truth by saying, I don't recall.
Remember the elderly man with Robert Hur? I mean, this is setting up the you're right on. I'm going to put that money on in Vegas that you're right. This is setting up the I don't recall, the ambiguous statements, and what do you have to prove?
Although that made me so mad because he took the classified documents when he was a vice president, or when he was a senator. United States senator, and then when he was a vice president, when he was completely with it. So that really frustrated me from the.
He did not have the ability to declassify anything, neither did Clinton as Secretary of State or Senator. Trump did. That's why when they tried to imprison Trump, he could have actually verbally declassified anything. Even Politico wrote about that. Trump could have declassified everything. So they said, classified documents. He could have declassified it, and you have no way of proving whether he did or not, and you have to trust him. I don't mind trusting Biden. If the rebuttal is, we'll trust Biden. Okay, great. Who did he tell? These are emails. The issue with the Biden pardons is that 50 different email chains or 50 different emails say, okay, Biden said this, Biden said that. Well, who did he tell? Biden would have had to tell somebody, then that person would have emailed the AutoPen people. We don't know the AutoPen people. We don't know who Biden told to pardon the select committee, Schiff and Cheney and others. Who did Biden tell? Because nobody under oath ever stated that they were told to pardon anyone. Oh, it's a process. Oh, I don't know who runs the AutoPen. Oh, so Biden put them in legal peril because Biden said, "Hey, man, come on, cornflakes. I told everybody verbally, man, orally, man." And so who did he tell? Because nobody, his chief of staff hasn't, I don't believe, I could be wrong, I don't believe his chief of staff said Biden told him to pardon Cheney and Schiff. But anyway, let's continue.
Special counsel Robert Hur. Griff, does this signal to you that someone's a little bit worried about these investigations that are taking place on Capitol Hill?
Oh, you bet. You bet. What is the motivation?
By someone, I mean Biden.
And by the way, here, this is the sort of stuff I'm talking about, that out in Colorado Springs, it was all on full display, Lisa. But now, listen, I can understand and appreciate, particularly if Dr. Joe Biden or others that are close to the former president are worried.
See, it doesn't bring me joy to watch this, but oh my goodness, the wonderful morally superior, they have such angst. They have the wonderful morally superior liberal Democrats or progressives or socialists or communists, they have such, I don't know what the word is, angst or vitriol or venom. They would get some type of experience that, I can't explain exactly what they would experience, but it's similar to what I experienced potentially in the Oval Office. They would get some kind of bizarre gratification from watching President Trump fall in the manner that Biden falls. That's why you had people cheering the assassination of Charlie Kirk. These people cannot explain why they voted Biden or why they voted Harris or why they vote Democrat or what the Democrats stand for. When you are so indoctrinated like an artificial intelligence robot that you just vote Democrat no matter what, and then you see anyone who disagrees with you as like an abomination, logic and reason and compassion and empathy goes out the window. You become this narcissistic, indoctrinated artificial intelligence robot where your vantage point is so pristine, yet if you just open your eyes, you can see the corruption is so rampant and the vantage point is easily dismantled. Charlie Kirk oftentimes made college students look foolish, not out of spite, not on purpose, because their vantage point couldn't be defended. And that's why he was such a threat to the wonderful morally superior.
About his legacy being tarnished. But at the same time, there is no motivation to speak directly to the New York Times about this matter when your former aides are going up under oath on Capitol Hill. And so I think I think Alicia is onto something. I think there's some sort of calculation here that tie the two together, but I don't think it's going to work out to at least the former president's end of maybe trying to convince people something other than what we all saw with our eyes.
But they already know this. Yeah. The person who testifies, Jill Biden, the person who was always next to him, not just Ron Klain. Yeah. And it's not what you allege, it's what you can prove. That's how they try to get away with it.
Well, it certainly raises the stakes for the House Oversight Committee.
Hey, Sean Hannity here.
So the Oversight Committee is not going to say that the pardons are null and void without the pardons being null and void. It's not constitutional. Supreme Court backs Trump over 93% of the time. The Brennan Center had a very amusing, the Supreme Court should explain why they always back Trump. It's like, no, the Democrats should explain why they're always engaged in unconstitutional behavior. It's the Supreme Court that interprets the Constitution, nobody else. And they always side with Trump. So what does that tell you? Who are the despots in that equation? But hit subscribe to this channel, people. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right this second. It's below in the pinned comment and description. God bless you all. Happy Halloween. Have a safe and wonderful Halloween. And to my super chat, TBJ, thank you so very much. Everybody, I'll see you later this evening.